My name is Elizabeth Sotorreina, and in this video we will talk about how the Second World War ends and their consequences. We are located in 1941, where Nazi Germany already had under its control the countries of France, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, and half of Poland. We have to remember that the other half of Poland was under the power of the Soviet Union. It is then that Hitler, confident of the power he had acquired, decided to break his pact with the Soviet Union. First, Hitler dominates the other half of Poland, then the Baltic countries, Belarus, and finally Ukraine. The plan was to take control of Moscow, but to their fate, the winter came, and the German troops could not meet the goal, but at least they had gained more ground, but they had made the mistake of getting into the Soviets. In this same year, Japan was also fascinated by how he had managed to expand his empire, until he decided to mess with the wrong country. In 1941, it is when Japan decided to attack the military base Pearl Harbor. Given this, the United States officially enters the war, and the Axis powers can see near its end. In 1942, the United States attacked some aircraft carriers belonging to the Japanese country. This is known as the Midway Battle. Returning to Europe, Churchill, Minister of the British Kingdom, sends planes to bomb the nations already dominated by Germany. Meanwhile, Italy loses power in the countries of northern Africa and has no choice but to go away. Given this, Hitler, somewhat annoyed to have lost control of Africa, decided to attack Stalingrad, mostly because of the oil it had. The Battle of Stalingrad was the bloodiest, according to historians, and was lost by the Germans when they surrendered in 1943. In July of that same year, the Soviet Union was recovering territory, and one of the battles it fought was the Battle of Kursk, which was the battle with too much involvement of war tanks. At the same time that this was happening, the other Allied countries bombed Rome, and soon they will capture Mussolini. It took 11 months to free Rome from the power of the Axis powers. Now we are in June of 1945, and the famous D-Day will take place. D-Day, it is called like that since it was the strategic day where the Allies will give a big blow to recover France. American, Canadian, and British troops arrive on the Normandy coast on June 5 of 1945. This day they take it to prepare their attack. The next day, the D-Day plan begins. First, the Allies tried to recover the Omaha and Juno beaches. Then they went to free Caen and didn't take long to get to Paris and drive the German army away. D-Day, without a doubt, was the key element for the Allies to win the war. Returning to the Soviet Union, this nation had already gained its former territory and without a doubt crossed the border they had with Germany. Hitler, by a desperate attempt to avoid the unexpected advance of the Allies, decides to attack in the Ardennes, but that battle fails. If we take a look at the Japanese Empire, was having some problems with its dominance over some countries of the Pacific. By the beginning of 1945, the Soviet Union arrives to Auschwitz, where they found concentration camps, and the atrocious events committed in these places are made public. The Allies continued to bomb the sites under German rule, until in April the Soviet Union won the Battle of Berlin. Hitler acknowledged that he was completely surrounded. He had already lost the power of his nation, so he opted for suicide in the desperation of knowing that he had lost the war. In the same month, the execution of Mussolini was carried out. Germany gave up and the war in Europe is won by Allies. However, Japan still stood and didn't think to give up. By then, the United States had achieved the creation of nuclear bombs and took advantage of that opportunity to launch them in Japan in August of that year, more specifically in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Before these two heartbreaking events, Hirohito accepts his defeat and gives the official announcement where Japan surrenders to the United States, which means the total victory of the Allies. The Second World War officially ended in 1945, but after that, difficult times came for Europe. Several cities were totally destroyed, millions of people died, and there was no resources for the few people who were still alive. On the economic side, the United States saw an opportunity to help and offer its services. Since the war had begun, the United States had recovered from its economic depression, since the war generated jobs and movements in the stock market. So now the United States had the necessary resources but lacked customers. This is how it involved Europe with the Marshall Plan, in which only the following countries participated: United Kingdom, France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, Italy, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Sweden, Ireland, Portugal, Greece, and Turkey. But why only these countries? Well, the other countries of Europe had been under the control of the Soviet Union, and as we know after the war, this nation and the United States had become world powers, but had grown a rivalry for a difference of ideas. The Marshall Plan, apart from being an economic recovery for Europe, was also political recovery, so that none of those countries would fall before the communist ideology that was the one that handled the Soviet Union. So now Europe was divided into Eastern Europe, the communist, and Western Europe, the capitalist. Of course, most Eastern countries did not agree with that regime, but when they were under the control of the Soviet Union, there was nothing they could do. The social consequences were that innocent lives had been lost. Europe had to rebuild everything, and many people had been displaced from their home. All this situation made people reflect, and this is how the United Nations takes place to protect people and prevent wars of that magnitude. Although they had promised not to make more wars, it seems that this was not clear to the Soviet Union and the United States. Their fight to see who was better became tense to the point where they called the Cold War. That's because they never clashed directly, but the threats were there. I interviewed a person to know their opinion about the difference between communism and capitalism. The data is on the screen. In summary, their answer was Soviet Union is communism and United States is capitalism. This is correct, but for give a more complete answer, I will explain it. Capitalism is a socio-economic system that is based on the private property of the form of production. Capital is important as a generator of wealth, and resources are allocated using the market mechanism. On the other hand, communism was a movement of a political nature that is in favor of forming a society free of social classes. Its main purpose is to abolish the state. If there is no private property, there is no exploitation. In my opinion, wars seem unnecessary to me. It is not fair that because of problems between the heads of nations arise conflicts so strong as to attack each other. Something to be admired is the power of war in the leaders of that time, since to convince many people to trust their point of view must be very difficult, or simply they know what people wanted to hear. At least this time people had already understood how racist people can become and already understood that they can avoid that kind of behavior. Now, my opinion on ideologies is that communism had good intentions, but it was too extreme and aggressive, so it became a difficult system to carry, while capitalism is easier to follow, but the only one that really works is the United States and the first world countries, because other countries that have this system have not served much, and have only taken advantage of people with this. I feel that a combination of both will be the perfect balance that a nation seeks. Anyway, this is just my opinion, and obviously each person is free to make their own judgment. Clear as long as people understand the concepts and don't think just to talk. Thanks for your attention.